became a loud as a sound caressed the air, and I kicked it up a notch as I strolled without a care, cause I'm going down the road to a brand new place, and I'll get there with a smile on my face. Yeah, so lift me up, I'm moving on, singing and dancing while I play my song.
Welcome, your Backup Plan Tribe, to another wonderful show. I'm so very excited to have Reverend Tomas Garza here from beautiful Phoenix, Arizona. Welcome, your Backup Plan Tribe. If you are new here, welcome to our show, Talking Taboo with Tina. Yes, taboo subjects, aren't they awesome? Brought to you by your Backup Plan app. We focus on real, raw conversations with our listeners about our guests' journey in their life-changing event in their life. What is your Backup Plan app anyways? Tina, what the heck is it? It is a place where you can put all of the things that are up in your head, only your head, and no, but sometimes your spouse and partner and family, friends don't even know, like where your key is, or where your passwords are, or where you wrote down those reward points that you signed up for, or where you have Xbox digital money from, or those bank accounts, or those investment accounts that nobody else knows where they're located. They might know that you have them, but where are they? Those are all the things that are up in your head. Maybe your safety deposit box for your bank, passwords, all of that stuff. Where is it? Where's your will? Where's your power of attorney? All of that stuff we talk about in your Backup Plan app. And it takes that painful aftermath out of that tragedy. So let's say, you ended up with COVID and you end up in the hospital in ICU. And everybody's thinking, well, how do we pay their electricity bill? How do we pay their mortgage or their rent? How do we do all of this when they're stuck in the hospital and they can't tell us? Now what? What do we do for an emergency with a hurricane or a tornado or an earthquake? Because, okay, guys, we know that around the world, we are not prepared. We aren't. Look at what happened in South Korea this weekend. Do you think that all of the cities around the world in every country is prepared for any tragedy? We're not. We have some. I've seen Florida in hurricane season, and they're very well prepared. But still, there's probably lots of things that they could be doing better. Shootings we're not prepared for. All of these things that have changed our lives forever. We're not prepared to hear the cancer word. We're not prepared to have a stroke at work or at home. We're just not. And so that's what we talk about. We talk about having family conversations. We talk about having, being a team, like in a business, like we have to be better prepared for the unexpected, because we're not Superman, and we're definitely just like, see, I talk about this all the time, and I can't even, thank goodness I have my notes in front of me. I've been doing this 3 years and I still forget. Mike Tyson's famous quote is, "Everyone has a plan until you get punched in the mouth." And it's very, very true. Very true in so many aspects. But anyways, let's get this party started. I'd like to welcome and thank you for listening to our show, United States, and our Canadian listeners. Our German listeners are third. Our fourth is Ireland. So thank you. And thank you to all the other countries. I love each and every one of you. And please like, share, and subscribe. I get my hand out down here. Push on that bell right there, just in the corner of your button. Press on the subscribe button. I'll wait for you to do that. Okay? Just do it. Just So then you get notified of all our next videos that are coming up because you don't want to miss them, right? So let's get the party started. My German listeners, meine deutsche Freunde sind unserem Podcast willkommen. Wenn Sie Kommentare haben, können Sie gern Fragen stellen. Also danke für deine Freundschaft und danke fürs Zuhören, meine Freunde. So thank you, my German listeners also. And maybe I'm going to work on that Irish accent. I will. When you guys get those numbers up there, I'll definitely try that Irish accent for you. So let's get this party started with Reverend Tomas Garza. Let's get him here. There we go. There he is. Welcome, welcome.
Well, hello. Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here with you.
I'm so excited to have you. He comes to us from Phoenix, Arizona. He is author, reverend. He's an ordained minister of metaphysical sciences and spiritual coach and a teacher. That's quite the mouthful. Where did all of this start for you? Because, you know, we're going to talk about what you do, and I'm sure it's helped you through this world that we're living in, and that you're in. I guess we've chosen our mothers, and our title today is dealing with the loss of my mother. But wait, what if I didn't like her? Because, you know, that happens.
It does. It's so common, and it's really wonderful. I really appreciate, Tina, that you've invited me to come and join you today, because this is something that I think is relevant to so many people. Wait a minute, what if I had a complicated relationship with somebody? Yeah, so.
That's for sure. I mean, it's complicated when you treasure them and don't want them to go and all of that grief, but we're still going to grieve, right? So where did you feel like you started with being younger and growing up? Where did it all start?
Well, the inclination toward spirituality started when I was very, very young. It's really been the only thing that has deeply, deeply interested me in this lifetime. And this goes all the way back to being a small child, age 4 or 5. It was the connection to the unseen that has always intrigued and attracted me. And even when I spent significant periods of time, especially as a younger adult, engaged in other careers and things that looked very different on the surface, it was always the underpinning. Spirituality was always the underpinning of everything. So that's been a constant. And also the complicated relationship that we're talking about, in this case with my own mother, began early on as well.
When do you remember, Thomas? When do you recall, like, looking back thinking, she did that? How did I survive that?
Well, I was born in 1971, and in the mid to late 70s, we lived in a very large and very cool house where I had an upstairs bedroom and the kitchen level was downstairs. And I remember coming downstairs many times to find my mother livid and irate, and I didn't know why at 4 or 5, but it wasn't too long before I began to equate these tirades with the bottle of wine that resided underneath the sink.
You're going to upset a lot of listeners about the wine.
Am I? Well, I won't upset people that like.
No, I know. They love their wine.
Well, they do, but this was a wine that I never loved. And even when I was a teenager and had every opportunity to break into other people's liquor cabinets, which of course I did, I never touched my mother's wine because it was cheap. A big jug with a handle.
Oh, yeah, that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did she drink a lot all the time?
Too much, too much. She was an alcoholic, and yeah, this doesn't make me or anyone else unusual because it's so common. But it's just it's something that is very difficult. And as a kid, I would equate violent tirades with the booze. I mean, as I just mentioned, it didn't take too long before that was the case. And I have a younger sister. She and I handled this completely differently. I wanted to get away from my mother, and she went full on teeth bared, and she's younger than I am, on the verbal assault and attack. So they would fight and they would fight, and I would
Oh,
do everything in my power to get away from the scenario. And it didn't erupt every day, but often enough. Yeah,
and was it
when
like purposeful fighting, or like was there a reason, or was it just you just
well,
looked at me the wrong way?
we never really knew what was going to set her off. So this does mean, and this is the
Mm.
same whether someone is an adult or a kid, it doesn't make any difference. When you live with a volatile person, they don't have to be an alcoholic. You're always walking on eggshells, wondering when the other shoe is going to drop, wondering what it's going to be today that's going to set this person off into a violent stream of hatred. And
Mhm.
um,
Whether abusive with words, or
mhm.
did she throw things and hit things and stuff too?
No, no, very rarely did she pick up any objects and throw them. It was almost all verbal and emotional, and the tone of the voice was full of hate. And as a kid, we don't have the wherewithal and the adult experience to know that this person really hates themselves, and that's why
No.
they're drinking so much in the first place. As a kid, you just think, oh my god, what did I do?
Yeah. Yeah, that's really unfortunate, isn't it, with
It
kids?
is.
Because when they divorce, it's what did I do as well, or
Mhm.
when they're younger like that. So how did it continue then? You put up with this yelling, and it was when you came home from school, and it was all the time?
It was several days a week when we came home from school, and then as my sister and I grew into teenagers, of course, we had teenage awareness, which of course is not adult awareness. We thought so at the time. I mean, who
Yes.
doesn't think you own the world at 14? Right? But
Yes.
we had a different level of awareness, but the difficulties still persisted, and our own ingrained habits of dealing with it were the same. I wanted to get out of the house as often as I could, and I grew up in New Mexico here in the United States. At the time, this was the 1980s, a kid could get their driver's license at age 15. So I did that. And in fact, I had already been taking the car out and getting away prior to obtaining my license because I could. And I also had the opportunity because my mother would lay passed out drunk.
Oh. Oh. So it just
Often.
progressively got worse.
It did. It got worse and worse, and she would still go off to work. She was a registered nurse and was able to be very high functioning as an
Wow.
alcoholic.
That's
And
amazing.
mhm, yeah, I'm not sure how she actually did that, but she did.
Wow. And there's so many walking around as high functional alcoholics
Mhm,
that
mhm.
we don't even know are out there serving you at some office or hospital or somewhere.
Well, yeah, that's a very good point. We don't know. We don't know what kind of day someone has had. We don't know what kind of relationship someone has, whether they're troubled or whether they seem rude because they're full of stress about how they're going to leave an abusive partner, maybe this time. And we just don't know.
So, growing up, did you ever think that this was normal? I guess you did.
Oh, yeah. Yes. And what really brought that home didn't actually happen. There's one instance in particular that didn't happen until I was in college. I was about 22 years old, and it was not at the beginning. It was toward the end of college. I was home on a break and had a friend of mine that I had gone to high school with over. My mom got drunk, as she frequently did, and my younger sister, who was also home on a break, got into a raging fight with her. And I just kind of carried on as though it was no big deal. And my
Oh
friend
dear.
got very nervous and asked if we could leave. He said, "This isn't the way people treat each other. I'm really uncomfortable here." And it was then that it dawned
Good
on
for
me.
them.
Yeah, right, very right. Yeah. It was then that it dawned on me that I'd become completely habituated to this, that this was normal. People treat each other this way. Yeah, this is what people do. Even with people that they love, it doesn't matter. It's difficult, it's hard. You have to defend and protect yourself because you're always under attack. Those types of thoughts.
Yes. And I think in these situations, she probably didn't mean to be that way, but it was that situation of what happened when she drank. Was
Mhm.
she at all normal when she wasn't drinking, or was she just never
Yes.
not drinking?
Yes. And the funny thing is, she had a very split personality. I mean, complete Jekyll and Hyde. When she wasn't drinking, she'd go off and go to work and win all kinds of awards of excellence as a critical care nurse, a high stress because she was able to relate to people, and they all saw her as highly compassionate, as professional, as qualified, as thorough, detail-oriented, and caring, and all of those qualities. And she would come home, and we'd see very little of that ourselves.
That's crazy. It's just like you
Mhm.
close the door and it's like a different person
And that's frequently the case. It is.
behind closed doors.
Mhm.
Da da
Yes,
da.
right. And it wouldn't take too long, and unfortunately, it was all too common.
Yeah.
The older we got, the more of it we saw, and the more we
Harder
were.
it was becoming.
Oh, it was very difficult. It's very difficult even as a kid because you don't know what's going on. You don't have any context or history for any of this behavior. And as a teenager, it's difficult in a different way. You have
Yeah.
context for it, you know why it's going on, and you know why she's drinking because she hates herself, hate, 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 and is drowning that hate with booze. And it's sometimes she would pass out, and those were good nights. When she didn't pass out and wanted to start fights, those were bad nights.
Yeah.
Hmm.
It's like, have another drink, Mom, so you can go to sleep.
Yeah.
All right.
I don't recall ever offering that.
I don't mean that actually. It was just,
Yeah. No, I
oh,
thought that several times.
I'm
Oh
sure.
my
I'm
God, how about a
sure.
shot? Here's some
You,
tequila or something,
yeah,
something
like
hard. Just go
stop.
away.
Just let it stop.
Mhm.
Right?
Yes, absolutely.
What did you feel as a kid? I'm sure you didn't realize what this was all about, but I just watched the Marilyn show, and it seems like mental illness plays a big part in the addiction.
Mhm.
That's what it seemed like to me with Marilyn's mom.
Mhm.
And
Right.
then it continued further. She was a drunk and treated her like crap too. And
Mhm.
it's so sad to see it from that side, from that view, because all Marilyn wanted to do was to love her mom and her mom to love her. And I think that's what we all really strive for, to be loved.
Right.
And so as you get out and you left home and went to school, I guess, you went to college?
Yes. Mhm.
Was it more then that you awoke to, it doesn't have to look like this?
It
Or
was. It was because I was exposed to people like my friend in high school. Yet, when I was a little bit older, I saw even more of a situation that we might consider more loving and a happier family situation. I would take school vacations and spend them at friends' homes and see what a happy and what we would consider a loving and functional family would actually look like. And I realized, yeah, this is really deeply, deeply wrong, and it has been wrong the
yeah.
entire time. Hmm.
And what did you think of your mom at that point? Did you wonder what kind of trauma has she been through to have this in her life?
I did. I would find myself wondering that, but and in my 20s, I was more angry than compassionate. Unfortunately, at the
Yes.
time, I wanted her to stop, to just stop, and we had already tried all of the usual techniques, which
Mhm.
sometimes work, of interventions and trying to, while she's sober, bring it up, but nothing seemed to help. I would find myself thinking, sure, I wonder what has really, really deeply gone on, but I wasn't able to have that conversation with her. So it was just a thought that kept recurring.
You never did find out ever?
I have some inklings, and she never really did talk about it. However, she grew up in a really socially conservative household. Now, I had a very, very loving and warm and wonderful, uplifting relationship with my maternal grandparents, with her parents. Yet at the time, they were very old school and very strict and expected their children to conform to their own ways of
Beliefs.
thinking, their own
Mhm.
belief system, yeah, and their own code of behavior and conduct. And if you deviate from that, you suck, your scum type thing. And that was very, very difficult for her. They were very hard on her when she was a girl. And I think quite a bit of that may stem from that.
Yeah. And what kind of tirades would she get into? Did you have
Well,
ones even later on when you were older
yeah,
too?
they were always a direct attack. The
Oh,
tirades were direct attacks. Sometimes she would talk in her sleep, in a drunken stupor, and say things that one might consider hysterically funny because they made no sense. But it was always with
if you could only look at it that way.
right. Yeah. Well, and sometimes I succeeded at that, which was really nice. The only problem is the tone of voice in which those were delivered, which was always hateful, and always mean sounding. So the tirades were anything, and she would rip up our homework from time to time that we were working on, and yeah, that's a lot for a kid that's doing his or her best in school.
Yes.
She did that to
Yes.
my sister and me on more than one occasion.
Oh
Yeah,
dear.
unfortunate. Mhm.
And she just didn't get to the beatings or anything like that because that was pretty common in the 70s and the 80s too.
It was, and that really didn't happen to us very much. I'm 6'3", and I played football in high school, so I was large, and nobody was going to beat me at
Yeah.
all. That wasn't going to happen. But the violence wasn't physical. It was mental, emotional, verbal.
And what would you say, because I noticed in movies that abuse was physical
Mhm.
and didn't realize that mental abuse is probably, if not worse.
Yes. And it's also more pervasive, because if there's physical abuse in a relationship, which isn't always the case, there's absolutely going to be mental and emotional abuse. And that's really something that stays with you, is that mental and emotional trauma, really.
Yes, that you can't seem to get it to slide off you very easily.
No.
It's like
No.
stuck to you.
Well, it is, and it's that attenuation that we're talking about. It's the fact that this feels normal, our sense that we get from through no fault of our own most of the time, that this is life, this is what it's like, this is what it must be.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So diving deeper into the years forward, did she get sick and someone had to look after her, or she got remarried, or she was on her own?
Well, she did. In 1980, she and my dad divorced in 1980, and pretty quickly after, in the very early 80s, she got remarried to an alcoholic, and we had
Oh
two of them.
no.
Yes, I was a
Oh
teenager.
no.
We had two of them
Just
in the
to add
house.
it. Add
Yeah,
it together. Let's
toxic.
drink in our own sorrows.
A toxic, lethal mix that never should have been. Lasted 6 years. That made for some long nights.
Wow.
Hmm.
And you weren't home at that. You were still home at that point.
Yes, yes. Yeah, this relationship lasted from about 1981 to 1986. Just a few short years, but I didn't graduate high school until 1990. So I was there for the entire thing.
Oh
Yeah,
no.
bad.
Oh dear.
Hmm.
Would they fight with each other?
Almost always. Very
Oh,
rarely did my sister get involved. Very rarely did I get involved. And we didn't do that really deliberately. It's one of those situations where the fight kind of finds you. They would fight with each other, and we wouldn't know when we went to bed at night if we'd be awakened to a high pitched verbal battle. And they would last for hours and hours. And there was
oh
really
dear.
nothing that we could do. If we went out into the living room or anywhere where they were having the fight and asked them to please shut up, can you kindly shut up so we can go to sleep? We've
Yeah.
got tests tomorrow. It's 3:30 in the morning. What the fuck? Right?
Yeah.
We didn't have the ability really to say that, and it wouldn't have done any good. So we wound up staying in our rooms or
Yeah.
leaving.
Or
Leaving.
sneaking.
Leaving. That was me.
Sneaking out.
Oh yeah, all the time. We both did it.
Well, it's probably safer actually.
It often was. It often was. And what usually would happen is I would wait until someone passed out, and I didn't even have to remove the screen from my window in my bedroom or anything like that. I just walk out the front door. So
Isn't that crazy?
it was wild. I kept thinking all of the time, gosh, I'm going to get caught. I'm going to get caught here, and I'm going to have a lot of talking to do. What are you doing out at 4 in the morning? You're 14 years old. Well, walking around. I don't know.
Yeah.
Hanging out. Yeah.
Yeah, doing something other than listening to you.
Hmm. But I never did. So happily, happily.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Um, so as you grew up, I guess she divorced, did
Yes.
she? And wow, they took enough time not to drink to divorce each other and sign the papers?
Well, unfortunately, he beat beat her up big time and put her in the hospital. And the divorce followed that pretty quickly.
Oh
Pretty
my
quickly.
goodness.
Luckily. Hmm. Yeah. So there
And
was that. It's
that's
the
very
hardcore
traumatic.
violence. It is. It is hardcore violence. I didn't see it. My sister and I weren't there. We had gone out for pizza, which was very fortunate.
Yes, thank goodness.
Mhm, right. Yeah.
But
absolutely.
have to deal with the aftermath, though, still.
We did. We did, which of course involved more drinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she's on her own after that for the rest of
Yes.
her time?
She never remarried. In the 90s, she dated a couple of guys, but nothing that led to a serious relationship. And she was on her own the rest of the time, which, well, I mean, I guess that's just part of what her journey was to look like.
Yes. And moving forward, we know she passed away.
Mhm.
And how old was she when did she get sick or?
She was 70. She was 70 and passed away in May of 2016. For about the last year and a half of her life, she had been very, very unhealthy. And she, in addition to being an alcoholic, she was a 2 to 3 pack a day smoker, which
Oh,
was a habit she developed at age 16 and continued on and on into adulthood. And what they said was that she died of a cardiac arrest, something like that, brought on by the smoking and the drinking, and just really poor health overall.
I didn't realize this, but you could have seizures too. So I wonder if she had just. They say it's hard on your heart with all the drinking and not drinking and drinking and not drinking, like the ups and downs.
I can imagine it's very difficult. It's very difficult on every system, for sure.
So you weren't close to with her then, and when she
No,
was 50,
no.
60, and
And this is very, very interesting. I did not, at the time she died, she and I did not have a speaking relationship. I had put some very healthy boundaries in place a couple of years earlier. Now, I have 2 children. They're teenagers now, they're 19 and 16. And she, my younger sister never had any kids. So my 2 kids were my mother's only grandchildren. And she continued to mistreat me as an adult. And here we are in my 40s at the time. About 2014, I finally reached the point where I had had enough of taking verbal and emotional abuse from her, which continued on into adulthood. Long after I'd moved out of the house, long after I'd had kids of my own, a career of my own, a house of my own, all of that stuff, the abuse continued. And it was only then that I was actually able, in my 40s, to put a stop to it and to set some healthy boundaries. And I simply told her that the way you've treated me my entire life is unacceptable. I'm not going to be treated this way. And if this is what it's going to be like, I'm not going to speak with you. I'm not going to email. I'm not going to text you. And I'm not going to facilitate your relationship with my kids. This is unacceptable. And it was difficult to say at the time, but I did it and instantly felt lighter. Now, this was a couple of years before she passed away. And during those 2 years, we did not speak at all, at all.
wow.
And then I got a phone call from my sister's boyfriend that they had found her dead one morning.
Oh, oh,
Mhm.
having a heart attack or something.
Yes, yes.
Oh dear. So you never really found out what she was all about, really, inside her deals, her problems.
Just fear. Yeah. Just
That's kind of sad, isn't it, really?
Well, it is sad, and the reason that I was able to move forward in the way that I did had directly to do with my own spiritual practice that had been a part of my entire life. I reached a point of awareness where I realized it was okay to set healthy boundaries and forgive, because the forgiveness is being done in my own mind. I don't have to call her up. I don't have to sit down for a heart-to-heart conversation and have her berate me for every choice that I've made from the moment I was born until now, and then some. And then some that I
Yeah.
didn't make that she attributed to me. And yeah,
Yeah.
the kind of conversation that people feel that they have to have, I didn't have to have that. And if had it not been for my own spiritual practice and the time and the effort that I had spent on that, I wouldn't have been able to set those boundaries and move forward myself. And I'm very grateful that I did.
What do you think others, if they don't go down the spiritual route at all and see the forest for the trees, so to
Mm-hmm.
speak? It's a difficult journey that you've been given with your mother. And,
Mm-hmm.
we are all supposed to love our mom. And I'm sure you loved your mom.
Oh, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
But
Yes.
yeah, there's this fine line somewhere in there between.
Well, it's possible to love someone and not take their crap.
Yeah,
It's a lesson that doesn't come easily for most people, and it certainly didn't come easily for me.
no. So we're going to talk about when she did pass and the after party afterwards,
Hmm.
because people don't realize, just because, we've talked about on the show lots of times, for people who've loved someone so dearly and they don't want them to go, but then to find out that your mom, who you had this difficult relationship with, passes away. How do you work through that?
I had begun to work through it prior to her passing. And I think that in my situation, what made that possible was the fact that I set those healthy boundaries, and she refused to talk to me, and I didn't seek her out either. So we weren't on speaking terms, and I could just go to work on my own mind. That was what enabled me to move forward in the way that I did. And she hated herself, and really, it will
What
never
gave
be.
you that idea, Thomas? What do you think?
Oh,
Why
that
do
she
you
that
why
she
did you
hated
feel
herself.
that way?
Oh, well, raging alcoholic. Number one, right? Number two, some of the things that she would say in her drunken tirades about feeling like a loser, of being
Oh,
unworthy of love, unworthy of affection, unworthy in general as a human being. And she would say some of those things, and even if she hadn't said them, when somebody drinks to the point of passive suicide, which is, we'll never be able to prove that that's what she did, but it's what she did. Passive suicide, gave up the will to live. When
mhm.
somebody's doing that, they definitely don't have a good self-esteem, for sure.
True.
Yeah.
Very true. And how do there's going to be a lot of listeners out there that are going to be sitting beside their mother passing away
Mm,
on the
yes.
hospital bed somewhere. And a lot of things go in your mind when
Hmm.
they're going. For you, she had already gone, but there's a lot of thoughts after.
Right. Oh, there are. Oh, yes. Even still, there are a lot of thoughts, and there were thoughts of anger and disappointment, and also love, and it really was a mixed bag for quite some time. And I don't know that this was my experience in this lifetime. And it's true that a number of people have a wonderful relationship with their parents, with their dads, their moms, and will be wanting them to stick around because of that love and because of
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
mutual bond. Yeah,
You don't want them to go on lots of relationships.
right. Well, and with this one, she wanted to go, and she did. And I thought, okay, well, she clearly does want out. There's nothing I'm going to do to stop her because there's really nothing I can do. This is a decision that she has made herself. When and where she made that, I don't really know. But it's not given me to know. All I have is what's showing up right now, and that's really all that we have in any of us in any situation is what's showing up for us in the moment.
It's funny how you've really gone the spiritual route because you're so soft spoken and so gentle, such a gentle giant, I guess you could say, if you're 6'3".
That's all. Yeah.
um, Out of this unbelievable dramatic component of life that you've lived, to come out of it and be such a gentle person, it's unbelievable, really.
Oh, well, yeah. Thank you. I'm happy that the gentleness comes across because really that's what any of us in spiritual practice is aiming for. It's yeah, it's just it's not an easy journey, but she was my mother in this lifetime so that I could forgive her, so that I could learn about true forgiveness and keeping healthy boundaries, and that I could have all of the experiences because it wasn't all horrid. It never is. Any relationship is like that. There are beautiful moments along with all the psychodrama.
Yeah.
There really
Do you
are.
think she had a mental illness?
I would say so. Uh, I would say so, but it was never diagnosed nor ever seriously discussed.
Because that probably could have really helped her if there had been some sort of help. Now, in the Marilyn Monroe movie, her mom was put into one of those mental institutes, I
Mhm.
guess. But I don't think we have them anymore. Like what we viewed in the 70s,
Right.
where you walk into those horror movies and basically, and they walk in and everybody's yelling and screaming and acting strange. All the
Hmm.
patients are all weird.
Right. Yeah. All
I don't know
trouble.
how else to put it, but yeah. So I think that was a form that they used back then, but I'm not really sure. If you're not diagnosed or caught by a doctor or something, then nobody even knows how to fix it.
Right. And a lot, but also back then, there's the cultural, wow, there's just the cultural attitude that a lot of that is unacknowledged. It's not worthy of being acknowledged. So it was swept under the rug. And we didn't have, as I remember as a kid at least, we didn't have the diagnoses that people have today. And things weren't as readily identified and they were denied quite a bit of the time. So it's just, we live in different times now where I think people have more resources at their disposal.
Yeah. What kind of suggestions would you give someone who's going through this now? Um, what you've gone through with a difficult
Mm.
mother?
Mm.
Because we are all going to grieve
Yes.
after.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And sometimes this awful stuff, does it come out after as well that you've pushed down into you?
It does. It does, and it didn't really surprise me because it's pretty natural. For me, it was decades of awful stuff, and of course, it was more concentrated when I was younger and lived at home. But you know what I would say to people is self care is really important. You've got to take care of yourself. And people don't want to believe that it's okay to set healthy boundaries, but it is not only okay, it is essential that you do that for your own health. This is something that I used to talk to my clients about when I was a mediator in family practice, which I did for 13 years. I would tell these grieving parents that were going through a process of divorce that you've got to be at your level best on a given day. That varies from one day to the next, right? You can get sick, you can have a bad day, but you've got to be the strongest that you possibly can for your children. So you must pay attention to your own mental health. You must pay attention to your own emotional health. And if this means setting a healthy boundary, you'll be glad you did. Doesn't matter if it's scary, because it usually is, of course. But it's something that's really worth focusing on, because we really owe it to everyone around us, not just our kids, but everyone, to be at the best we possibly can on a given day. We really do.
Well, for sure, because you don't know if you're going to be here tomorrow.
No. In fact, I had a teacher who would justify taking another piece of chocolate cake from the buffet line, a spiritual teacher who said, "I don't know if I'm going to be alive for another 15 minutes. I'd better have another piece of chocolate cake." Which I'm not necessarily advocating.
But it sounds good on his point of view.
No. I mean, you just don't know.
It's true. You don't.
Mm-hmm.
You don't. And that's the crazy part, because I think a lot of times, I think we want to fix things. I think you probably felt you wanted to fix the relationship as your mom got older, and that creates havoc and confusion in your own mind as well.
It created quite a bit of havoc and confusion, because I did want to help. Yeah, I think for me, I didn't really want to fix it myself, but I wanted to give her tools and help, and I wanted to be supportive to her, and that was all met with resistance.
Yeah. Well, she's not. Some of the I think they're just not ready. No. You can't make someone be ready.
No, and sometimes, this is a message for anyone, really. Sometimes you cannot, there's nothing that you can do to make somebody ready if they're not ready, even if they remain unready the rest of this lifetime. There's just no forcing it. They've got to make the changes themselves.
Did you see a correlation between Anna Hurst killing herself in her car last month? Do you see any similarities for that?
I think that, anytime somebody does kill themselves, whether it's active or passive, whether they left notes or left clues or not, it's always sad, isn't it? It's always sad, because we can only imagine what that person was going through, how black and bleak the scenario had to have been in order to end it like that. It's
if she thought it was going to end or not. I don't think she probably thought of that.
Some people likely don't. Yeah.
She just seemed irate, but it sounds kind of like the problem with alcoholism that does to the person.
Right. Yeah. Alcoholism is it's a pervasive and really difficult disease, and it's just it seems random that is the path for some people. This is what they've got to deal with, and other people can go out on a Friday night and kick back several drinks and get happy and laugh, and then not do it again for a long period of time, and yet other people can't stay away from it.
Yeah. And you never felt like you wanted to go down that same road.
No, happily. No, really fortunately, I don't have that kind of personality. It just never occurred to me.
Hmm. Because I understand that it is a thing genetically.
Mhm. Yes, right. That's what people say, and, well, happily, it skipped that generation 'cause, my sister is not she barely drinks anything at all, actually, so she's far from an alcoholic, and, that skipped over us, luckily, and I don't know how much of it was where you really saw the devastation that this can bring, and that helped us. I don't know, but I think that in some way it may have.
Well, you would think so.
Mhm.
When you see it, you get scared about that, and you
Yeah,
think, I don't want to do that. I mean,
I
that's
don't
what's
wanna
in
do
the back
that.
of your mind.
Mhm.
But so if somebody's, there's a family like you and your sister sitting beside your mom's bed and she's passing away, how can you advise people to cope with this new transition, this new change of her passing? And I'm sure there was moments when you were younger and you just wanted her to die. I'm going to be very honest. I'm sure there
Oh,
was.
absolutely. Mhm.
So
Yeah.
you have these weird, complicated things in your head. So,
Mhm. Well, you I this really it's an interesting question because I wasn't there, and in fact, she, had the heart attack as she was sitting on the toilet in the bathroom and wasn't discovered until the following day when she didn't turn up for a breakfast meeting with my sister. So, she went to check on her, and, there was no bedside moment. There wasn't a prolonged knowledge that this event was going to take place.
right.
So that it wasn't my experience, but if you're there and you're losing a loved one or a family member, I think it's always really helpful to think about the beautiful times that you've had. And again, what we were just talking about, it's something that you can do for them to be at your absolute best on a given day, because on one of these days they're going to pass, it's going to happen. And if you're calm, if you're in a loving and grateful space, that's going to be better.
Easier.
Hmm. Much.
Yeah. Because I can't imagine all the different feelings, even now, like you said, today, even years later, because you're having to deal with her estate. And that's what we talk about. And of course, your backup plan is
Right.
the preparation part. So now you two have to go in and try and figure out her life.
Well, yeah, I didn't have to do very much of that. Part of her retaliation against me for setting
Uh-oh.
healthy boundaries was cutting me out of her will completely.
Oh no. There
Nothing.
you go. Just to add a little bit more. Let's just
Yeah.
put that cut
A
a
little
little
more.
bit more there.
Mhm. I knew she did that. So, unfortunately for my younger sister, she's the one that had to sell her house, and my aunt was the designated executor of her will. So she had to go through all of the probate and all of the legal things, which I would have happily helped with, but that wasn't my lot in this lifetime to do any of that. All that I did after the fact was to help my sister clear out some of my own belongings from her house and her belongings, and just clean up and put things in boxes, get the house ready to be deep cleaned from years of smoke residue,
Oh,
and then
yeah.
sold. Hmm.
And
Yeah,
that
so I
must have
didn't
been
really have
so
to do
hard.
that much of that.
So you didn't fight about being not on the will or anything?
Oh,
It was
no, no,
just
it
left?
was clearly her will. To contest that would have been a waste of time and money.
Wow.
It was
And
very clear.
I guess your sister could have easily split it with you.
Could have.
right? I mean, it's
Could have.
her choice after, but
It is.
well, that puts another dagger into your heart a little bit, doesn't it?
That was something that I had to forgive as well. Yeah, speaking of forgiveness lessons, that was a good one and a big one, and one that I continued to have to repeat because I would feel enraged about not just the being cut out of her will, which really, I mean, it's her choice, right? But all of the events that led up to that, and the fact that I was not rewarded with $750,000, which would have been my share of this, because I set healthy boundaries and was an adult and expected
Yeah.
an adult to act like an adult. However, the emotional rewards, the mental rewards, and the peace of mind are much more valuable than that. Oh, yeah.
Well, that's for sure.
Much.
But I mean, anybody listening could probably say, "Oh, I'd be so mad I didn't get my money." And
Mhm.
but put it to you this way: even if it wasn't money, even if it was just the fact alone, being cut out of your mother's will, puts a little bit of a see, I'm not loved. See, I didn't get support. See, like all of these little things in your mind play because you were never accepted. I
Mhm.
think that's
Well,
probably the underlying part. The money is just the top. I mean, that's just what it is, but it's all the other stuff in behind.
yeah, and in this case, it was just a vendetta. That's all.
Yeah.
I mean, and they're all petty. Every single one of them is petty. That's why they call it a petty vendetta.
Yeah, true.
Getting back at somebody.
Yeah. See, in Canada, if you remove someone out of the will that's a child, they
Mm,
have the right to equal portions.
sure. Okay.
So it's very difficult not to win, actually,
Oh,
because if they were to give X amount to one child and not to the other child doesn't matter if they had any part in their life or not. They still have a part of the
okay.
estate.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and in different jurisdictions in the United States, it's different, and one can always go to court. Why,
Yeah.
why would I have done that? But here's something really, really interesting. If It was very easy for me to let go of the subject of money because she passed at 70. My maternal grandparents, with whom I had a beautiful relationship, lived to be 98. They didn't pass away until 2018. So
Oh,
guess who got my mom's share of their inheritance?
so life has its way.
It does. Yes, and I got that, and it's not about that though, of course,
No, no.
but it
But it
happened
did
that
help
way
because it
because
didn't
I was
matter what they had given you. It would have felt like
yeah.
you were giving something for your soul,
I
for your heart,
it
right?
it's testament to what happens when you're in the right frame of mind, when you act lovingly, when you act forgivingly. It is the it and this is
True.
proof positive. It's the result of spiritual practice in one of its manifestations. It's not all about money, of course, but that happened because I set healthy boundaries, because I forgave her, and short term, I was out quite a considerable sum and was angry about it and had
Yeah.
to work on my own forgiveness lessons. But without any of that, it makes it much, it changes your perspective on life.
Hmm.
It really does, and in a good way.
Yes, because it helps you forgive, not forget, but forgive.
Mhm. Sure, exactly, exactly. Yeah, very, very important. And again, no phone call required. It's done at the
No,
back of your own
no,
mind.
it's But I'll tell you, it's not easy, all that inner work. It's probably easier
No.
to make that phone call and get it over with.
Well, yeah, the inner and that may help. So if someone wants to make the phone call, they can. But the inner work, the rewards of the inner work are very great.
Yes. And it's a lot of inner work, believe me.
Yeah. Yes.
It's a lot of it's hard because it's work where you're looking for the answers.
Mm,
And so yeah, it's tough.
yeah.
What kind of final message would you like to give the listeners about? I have for everybody listening, I do have um, your information. Your website is down below in the description box below for anybody to see it. I don't have your book on there, but is it on your website?
It is. My book's
Okay.
on my website and also a link to my YouTube channel. And that's something that I've been heavily involved in the last
Awesome.
couple of years. You bet.
Okay. And what kind of final message would you like to give the listeners?
I would I just want to say that you're the answer you've been looking for. This means a lot of things, but you are the answer you've been looking for. So please, no matter what your situation is, whether you've recently lost a loved one or whether you're looking at that, whether someone is going to pass soon, it's honor and take care of yourself. It's so necessary. And everyone else benefits, but you benefit too. So please don't neglect that, would be my message.
And what do you mean by looking after yourself for any listeners out there that, does that mean going to the spa or getting your fingernails done? Or like, what does that mean?
Well, it could. It could involve that. Yes, it could involve that. It could involve calling in sick to work and hanging out and staying in bed and drawing a nice hot bath or hopping in the pool or something, right? Yeah. Or if you're in Canada and you're yearning for a tropical vacation, or if you live in the tropics and you need a vacation, take the tropical vacation. It could involve that. But I'm a spiritual teacher, so consider the source. It means doing the inner work.
Right. And I just wanted to make that clear because I think I've done a lot of that, and I probably wouldn't have known before I did it what that meant to do
Right.
that inner work to
Yeah.
yourself. Really go in and forgive the situation, forgive yourself, and forgive others. And
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, it's so important. And I fully get the reluctance to do that because it's an adult endeavor and we actually have to take a look at everything.
we have to look at our own crap.
Oh, yeah, especially that, because that's where the release really comes, is having the courage and the honesty, quite frankly, to take a look at that rather than running off and hiding, which is what we often want to do.
Well, it's the easy way out, but it doesn't
Mhm.
solve anything.
Not at all. No.
Yeah, true. Well, thank you. That was beautiful. Thank you so much. That was awesome message for all our listeners to hear. And please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and get my hand out here again. Push that subscribe button, everybody. And please, comment down below in our comment section if you've had a parent that's been difficult, or if you find that maybe you don't even want to go to the funeral. There's that too. There's a lot of people that don't do that. Or did you go to the funeral?
She didn't have one. She
Oh, that made it
specifically.
easier then.
It did. Yeah. Mhm.
So you have to kind of do your own funeral for the situation, though, for yourself, right?
Right. Right. Yes.
Yeah.
which was easy enough. But yeah, no funeral, no obituary, anything like that.
Right. Well, that made it easier because if there was a big party and a big celebration and everything, that would just be very awkward and difficult to either avoid and not go, or go and be awkward. And
Well, I certainly would have gone.
yeah,
And yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
it's just hard. It just makes it
Yes.
harder. So I appreciate everybody having to go through this because it's not easy. And um, your information is down below if anybody wanted to reach out to you, I guess. Right?
Yes, most definitely. I feel welcome to reach out with questions, comments. Yeah.
Absolutely. And if you comment down below, I'll make sure Tomas gets them as well, so that um, you can maybe
Cool.
answer them if
Beautiful. Thank you.
they're there. But thank you, everybody. I can't believe it's the end of another show already. It's gone by so quickly. Take a moment and subscribe to our channel and click on that bell so you get notified about our next shows coming up. And if you are thinking about that special someone right now, somebody in your own mind that you haven't talked to for a while, pick up the phone. We still have phones. Pick up the phone or Zoom or FaceTime or knock on their door and tell them how much you love and care about them today, because you don't know what tomorrow might bring. So they might not be there for you to tell. So stay tuned to our podcast and our live streams. We have great conversations with some of the most interesting and accomplished people in the world today, just like Reverend Tomas here. He's bringing a lot of information to us from a different angle today that I must admit is a taboo subject, because we don't like to talk about not having
Yeah.
a good relationship with our parents. So thank you again. I appreciate you coming on our show so very much, and to help all of us and all the listeners out there. So make sure you share this video if you know somebody struggling in this situation. I'm sure it would give them a bit of guidance. Don't forget your own plan, and what that might look like. Nobody's Superman. You are not going to get out of this life alive. Sorry to tell you, just not. So be prepared. We were on all podcast platforms: YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, TikTok, Pinterest, and Facebook group. Everywhere. We're everywhere. So don't forget to watch us on all those platforms. Thank you, and I love each and every one of you. And I'm going to end our show, which I always do, with Carol Burnett. And I'm sure you remember who Carol Burnett is. You must have watched Carol Burnett.
I did.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm so glad we had this time together just to have a laugh or sing a song. Seems we just get started, and before you know it, comes the time we have to say so long. So long, everybody. Stay safe, and thank you so very much, Reverend, this hand, for coming on our show today. Thank you so very much.
You're welcome. It's been my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. And thank you, everybody, for coming and watching our show. I love each and every one of you. Thank you for taking your time with us today. Stay safe. Be kind. Till next time. Bye.
Bye-bye.